Warner Brothers, Universal, Netflix, Amazon, AMC Theaters, Regal, and just about every major talent agency were all owned by just five companies. Shit, we're not that far away from that happening nowadays. But
Well,
also, actors couldn't choose what movies they starred in. Eh, still kind of happening nowadays. But anyways, that's exactly for decades how Hollywood was run. On this episode of Rent Free History, we're talking about the rise and fall of the golden age of Hollywood. I'm your host, Kem Wosu, and I'm joined by your other host, Peyton Cronin. Peyton, how you doing today?
I'm great.
That's great. All right, let's just jump into this like it's the deep end of the pool.
Was me
So most
jumping.
people actually assume filmmaking began in Hollywood, but early production was actually centered in New York, New Jersey, and Chicago.
Chicago,
Yep.
Chicago.
Because they kind of offered like the necessary theatrical talent. You know, you get your plays like New York, Broadway, Chicago, just like places where there are actors naturally they're already doing theater. Financial capital and just the infrastructure to kind of house all like the different production studios and stuff like that. And you know, Thomas Jefferson, or not Thomas Jefferson, Thomas Edison. Thomas Edison. His camera technology was invented in West Orange, New Jersey, and the region just became an immediate focal point for the industry. And then, you know, Edison had his own motion picture patent company, which was nicknamed the Edison Trust, which controlled, you know, of course, patents on like cameras and projectors. And it was great for independent filmmakers who wanted to avoid like licensing fees and lawsuits. Um, but Southern California eventually became the move. That's the spot. That's where everyone decided to go. And it was mainly because, you know, it's sunny in Southern California as opposed to Chicago or New York for the most part. So there was like reliable sunshine for natural lighting if they wanted to do that. There were diverse landscapes, which is funny to say about a place like Hollywood, diverse landscapes. Cheap land, another funny thing to say nowadays. Um, there was a large distance from the East Coast patent enforcement and proximity to Mexico if legal trouble arose. Because, you know, when all else fails, you flee to another country. That's the Hollywood way. So it's more of like a practical solution than a say like inevitable destination.
Yeah.
And during this time, we had some pretty notable companies and studio heads. We have Louis B. Mayer, who originally ran Louis B. Mayer Pictures, but he later uh, merged his company with a man whose name I'm forgetting, but whose last name is Metro. Who owned a place called Metro Pictures, and a man named Samuel Goldwyn. And together they made MGM, Metro Goldwyn Mayer, which I did not know what that actually stood for until about 5 years ago. Um, there's Adolf Zucker, who founded Paramount. Probably the only, actually, I don't know too much about him, to be honest. So I don't know if he's a good man, but probably the more least controversial men named Adolf or Adolf. I don't know how he pronounces it. So we've got Jack Warner, Warner Brothers, of course.
I
We've
wouldn't have never
got
guessed.
Carl Lemmy. Should have Google checked that before we started recording. I swear I was going to do that, but oh well. He made Universal, and the head behind Columbia, Harry Kahn. Now, the big five during this period was MGM, it was Warner Brothers, there was Paramount, There was 20th Century Fox, and then there was one that doesn't exist anymore today, and which I really only know of because they made Citizen Kane and a couple other notable films that I had to watch in film school called RKO. And then there was the
Mm.
Little Three, which are Universal, Columbia, and United Artists, which was helped started by Charlie Chaplin, a figure in history, and also I want to say her name is Alice. It's either Alice Cooper or Alice Guy. She was a flapper, and she was like a very notable like early feminist figure icon. But anyways, each studio had like a very distinct identity, which is kind of not what they have nowadays. They're not really known for particular identities. It's more of just like, oh, this is popular, so we'll chase this trend. But back then, MGM had like lavish prestige. Warner Brothers had gritty urban dramas. Paramount, of course, the European sophistication. Fox, they had their musicals and the spectacle, and RKO had their innovation. Like I said before, Citizen Kane, a very innovative film, a very good story. Um, and the next thing I want to talk about is the studio system and the that basically ruled Hollywood for most of the golden age until like the early 60s, essentially. So basically, um, studios signed actors, they produced films, they distributed them, and they owned the theaters. They were basically doing everything, and that way they were able to kind of rake in all the cost. So they're doing all the work and they're reaping all the rewards from it. And it's kind of interesting because I can't imagine that nowadays. Could you imagine that like an A24 movie theater?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But it's because everything is just so capitalistic. So to them at the time, they were like, yeah, because not only do they get the full benefit, but they also get the full control. They don't have to deal with any sort of like contract disputes, anything. They just have the full, like, this is what we are doing. You are going to do this and we are going to make money. And now it's so different because there are so many different codes and stuff now, but also that's so expensive. Outsourcing is so, so, so popular now for so many different things, and it's kinda like a balance system, like, checks and balances of in some ways, checks and balances because some companies do have all the control, but, it allows for more creatives to get involved in the process, and it becomes more accessible because then it's not just like it is all just one company. But if somebody were to try to do that, I honestly would love to see it. Could you imagine an Amazon movie theater?
You
Prime
know that
theater?
like Bezos is just like salivating at the thought of being able to do that.
Because that has to be the out of all the streaming companies, that has to be one of, like, the most likely to make one because they have everything. They're attached to so much. Could you imagine the Amazon merch? Do you think you could do pickup? Do you think they'd have a locker in front of it?
Yes. Yes, I do think that. I think they would be like, "Oh, you're already here picking up something at your locker. You might as well go see an Amazon movie."
Yeah, "Hey, here's a coupon for, I don't know, like, $1 off your $7 beverage."
If you're a Prime member, you get like discounts on like snacks and stuff like that.
And then you can what if you can, like, be, like a Prime double member or something, then it's like the AMC Stubs,
Oh
like, it's like
yeah.
that equivalent.
I went to go see Obsession and I stood up, like I almost stood up during that period because I've been seeing that meme of people being like, and shout out to our AMC Stubs members and like the guys that like stand up and they just like wave and bow.
It's so funny. I love
Yeah.
those videos.
Um But yeah, the studios, the lot essentially function like an industrial factory. Like one sound stage might be filming Western, next door a musical, and then across the lot a romantic comedy. Everything was built in house, costume departments, makeup departments, props, sets, music, editing, script departments. Studios reused everything. The same New York street might appear in a dozen of films, costumes altered, recycled, props passed from movie to movie. It's a lot different, you know? It's more like a 9 to 5 or, well, I'm just kidding. They would never work so little time. They would work those actors to the bone. Um, but nowadays it's more of like Hollywood is more of just contract work nowadays. Something I didn't really understand when I was younger. But yeah, they don't have just like normal, um, just like regular working out. Well, they never had regular working hours. I think I should emphasize that. But along with that, studios realized they weren't just selling movies, they were selling personalities. You know, if audiences loved a particular actor, they would turn to theaters because that name was on the marquee. And studios like invested heavily in creating these like recognizable stars. You know, they did voice coaching, dance lessons, etiquette training, acting classes, fashion, publicists, and very carefully staged interviews, which, you know, still they're still doing some of that nowadays, just not at the amount that they were doing them before. But it essentially is just like an assembly line. Like it's run like an industrial lot. And you know, it's like a product. Like it's not a person, it's a product that you're like marketing, you know?
Yeah, it's all about branding, all about advertising.
Yeah.
The it's always been so integrated and so important in the entertainment industry, but looking back, it's a little funny where it's like, "Oh, wait, no, guys, we have to do this. It's so new and innovative." And it's like, "Girl, that's an ad. It's just a walking ad now."
But they didn't stop there. Like they didn't just stop at professional training. They tried to like shape their identity. They arranged photo shoots, promoted lifestyles, you know, they would they would say to certain people, "Hey, I think you should get with this person because I think it would do great for your image and stuff like that." And, you know, the actors, you know, they're not feeling great about this, you know, over appearance, the long working hours, or trying to fit in a carefully magnified persona, like be this perfect person. And even nowadays, you still see semblances of that in certain actors. And, you know, not everyone can do that. I mean, no one can do that really. Like everyone, someone's going to imagine to is going to crack under the pressure eventually. And how do they cope? Drugs.
I feel like that was an inappropriate reaction. I mean, I don't partake personally. But like if you do, I guess like you do you, be safe. But is there
Look, everyone, Peyton's clean now. Let's not worry about that.
Oh no.
I'm kidding. Um, and some cases, 3 cases I want to talk about in terms of like overworked actors and stuff like that. One, the biggest example is probably Judy Garland.
Mhm.
We previously talked about her on the Exorcist episode, so weirdly enough, where we were talking about the Curse of the Wizard of Oz and stuff like that. But her experience at MGM has been one of the best known examples of like pressuring a star. She worked these like long hours, and it got to a point where she was taking uppers to get her up, and then downers to calm her down and stuff like that. And it was just like a mix of different things, and it really affected her later on in life. Um, you know, she had her high periods, her low periods, and things didn't end great, unfortunately, for her. And you know, it wasn't fair to her because she was a child, and they of course changed like a lot when it comes to child star treatment over the years, but yeah, she probably got it the worst, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. It's like everybody knows about it. It's just like a nightmare scenario, nightmare case.
And then we've got Betty Davis. She actually sued Warner Brothers because she was being assigned roles she felt were beneath her abilities. Wish I could do that. I wish I could sue a job because I thought they were giving me good enough work. But not really though. I love my job. I love my job. If anyone's wondering, uh, but she lost the lawsuit, unfortunately. But it was good because it highlighted the limits placed on contract actors, and later inspired other performers to seek like greater creative control, which is good because it's like one step forward or one small step for Betty Davis, one giant leap for actors and others like that. So that was cool.
Go, Betty.
And then the last one is Olivia de Havilland. Now, she actually sued and won against Warner Brothers. Because basically Warner Brothers was doing this thing where they would give someone a contract, and then they would extend the contract by adding suspended time where they just wouldn't work, essentially blacklisting them from like working anywhere else because they were still under contract, but they would just keep adding suspended time as like a punishment. And the courts ruled that the studios couldn't indefinitely extend contracts, and it eventually like allowed for actors to be free agents essentially, like sports, just signing a contract. And that pretty much fundamentally weakened the studio system. Another thing that I'd like to talk about, and we talked about this in a previous episode as well, is the Hays Code. Now, this all arose in the 1920s when there were a lot of scandals that were like highly publicized involving celebrities. And also, there was concern from religious groups and civic organizations about like what was going on in movies. There was some lot of, because the early days of movies, you could basically just put anything in there. They were very like experimental to some degree about what they were putting in there, and things got pretty intense. There's some like, for example, Scarface, very very interesting like pre Hays Code movie. They kind of throw the kitchen sink at you in terms of what they can show you. And there was a growing call for government censorship. They were like, you need to protect our kids from this kind of stuff. Though I don't know why your kid's watching Scarface, but I feel like that's a you problem, if anything. But rather than risk like a patchwork of state censorship laws or federal regulation, the industry chose to censor itself. And in 1922, they created the Motion Picture Producers and Distributors of America. And this guy named William H. Hayes uh, improved Hollywood's public image. And the code was officially put into place in 1934, where the Production Code Administration, led by Joseph Breen, gained the authority to refuse approval to films that violated the rules. So, yeah, they kind of had to follow the Hays Code, or they just weren't going to get like shown anywhere. Now, this is what the code restricted, this Hays Code. You can't glamorize crime. You can't portray criminals escaping justice. They're always got to face justice. You cannot show explicit sexual content, so no nudie bits. You cannot depict excessive violence, so no shooty bits. You cannot ridicule religion, so God is good and all that. You cannot include certain kinds of profanity, so no fucking swearing, and no positive drug use. So no smoking that ganja on the movie or cocaine.
No, only
Um,
behind the camera.
yeah. And then also, prohibiting LGBT characters as much as possible.
Boo!
Yeah.
Boo! Bring me Gilman. No, I'm just kidding.
But where there's a will, there's a way. And sometimes when you limit people, it forces them to be more creative. And filmmakers found a way to work around this. So directors became masters of just suggestion. Instead of showing violence, they implied it. Instead of explicit romance, they relied on dialogue. They relied on framing. They relied on chemistry. I think of Hitchcock when I think of this. I think
Yes,
of
yes.
in Psycho when the main character, she's getting dressed in a bed with a man, implying that something happened, but they don't show it because they couldn't. Um, but many classic films are filled with double meanings and visual storytelling because filmmakers had to, that double entendre. There's I'm trying to think. There's one more really good one. I can't remember if it's To Catch a Thief, but there's a movie where two characters that like have like obvious like sexual tension between the two of them. The movie ends with them kissing, and then a train goes into a tunnel, which yeah. Then you also have your genres like film noir, where you get like your shadows, your off-screen action, your moral ambiguity, became the strength. You got your Casablanca, your Maltese Falcons. These are mainly just Humphrey Bogart movies, but it's what I know. Um, Hollywood also seemed to do well during the Great Depression and during World War II because not the best periods for America. So people like to just like escape through musicals, through comedies. During the war, there were newsreels before features. You get your wartime propaganda. You got your Donald Duck cartoons. Yeah,
In more ways than one.
in more ways than one. And then stars, Hollywood stars. You got your comedians like who's that guy that hosts the Oscars a bunch? I'm
Oh,
blanking.
Conan?
No, 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 not Conan. He did it in like the 50s and 60s.
Me bringing up a not golden age of Hollywood actor.
No, Conan was there. Conan's always been there. He's been
He's
the host of the
always
Oscars
been the
every single year.
host.
This is I gotta look this up. Who hosts the Oscars? Let me look.
I can't remember, apparently, but it's only Conan
Bob
O'Brien
Hope,
could
that
bring
was it. Bob Hope.
That's right, yes, it was him.
Yes. So there was them. There were the female actresses who, would do the stereotypical like, "Hey boys," and then all the soldiers would be like, "Woo!" That's entertaining people, the troops overseas and stuff like that. So it was fun. It was good, and it helped that there was sound by this point also in movies. Jazz singer had come out. What's funny about that movie? I didn't know this. I knew it was like the first like movie with, well, it's the second technically, because I think there's one more before it that has synchronized sound, that came out the year before. But the jazz singer, the moments where people are talking, like that only happens 3 times in the movie. The rest of the time it's just silent.
Is it really?
Yeah, like there's this part where like a band is performing, and then some guy goes, wait a minute, you ain't seen nothing yet. And then they start playing another song. That's the one moment. There's one where the main character is talking to his mom. That's it. And then I think that may be it, or there might be one more. The rest of the movie is just a regular silent film.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's like they were like, Well, we can't have too much sound at once, guys.
Yeah, you don't want to blow people's minds there, folks.
Yeah, they're gonna think the train's coming at them.
Yeah. That's another thing, transatlantic accents. They were popular like early Hollywood because they thought like it was a combination between like British and the American accent. They wanted to like, you know, make people sound a bit more professional. So instead of car, you'd say car, stuff like that. But that seemed to die out like right after World War II. Like it's funny too because it seemed to go on for a bit longer. Like I feel like 50s, even leading into early 60s, you could still hear people with transatlantic accents.
Yeah, I feel like at that point, though, it had become, like, more of, like, a stylization of the time. So
Yeah,
it's just kinda, like, depending on what you're wanting to make. I love hearing them. I'm like, "Aw, you sound so funny." And it's all fake. It's all fake.
it is. It is.
It
They
was
don't sound like
fake.
that.
Of course it was fake. To bridge us during the war.
And speaking of war, there was a war for film going on, and it ended with a loss because this is where the fall comes. The fall of the golden age of Hollywood. In 1948, there was a Supreme Court case, and the government ruled that studios had to sell their theater chains, breaking up the vertical integration system. Such a monumental shift because theaters basically studios didn't have complete just like undisputed control the way they used to. Now they couldn't distribute movies the way they were previously. They could only make them and somebody else had to distribute them. So basically they would have to find theaters to distribute their movies and, the theaters would take a cut of the profits. But that wasn't the biggest thing. In my opinion, the biggest thing was, drum roll please, television, the idiot box.
Woo!
So families, literally, it's the literal, just like, why can we go to the movies? No, we have the movies at home, literally. You know, weekly movie going declined rapidly. And people wanted to watch Milton Berle and Jackie Gleason and all those other guys on TV at the time doing the things that they did. Ed Sullivan and his show, and people, just weren't going to the theater as much. You know, and studios had to counter with this. They started doing widescreen. They started doing Technicolor epics. Like one of my favorites is actually this. I was about to say Sound of Music, which is a good one. It's not the one I'm thinking of. What's the Good morning,
Oh,
Singing in the Rain. That's it. That's it.
it's something else I go on
Yeah.
good morning to you.
Ooh, also 3D. They did a lot of 3D back then,
Oh, yes.
and just like a lot of historical spectacles. Well, all at the same time, third and fourth things were labor changes. The actors, writers, and directors are gaining more leverage. At one point, it was the producer. The producer had all the power, and then the director started getting more of the power. And now it's the actors, writers, and directors. So they gain more like leverage, and then independent production companies became more common. But then we have something else: the blacklist.
No!
So
No!
we've got the Red Scare of the 50s, which led to the creation of the House Un-American Activities Committee. And it was basically anyone who showed sympathy or said that they liked an aspect of communism was basically blacklisted from Hollywood. And it sucks because it led to like the ousting of a lot of very creative people and also a lot of traitors in Hollywood. Like there's this one notable
Yeah.
director, I think his name is Eliza Katzin. Let me see if I can find that real quick. Eliza. Yeah, Aaliyah Elia Kazan. Elia Kazan. Yeah, actually, it's funny. The first thing that pops up when I look up his name is like a image of Orson Welles saying Elia Kazan is a traitor. So, yeah,
Well, there we have it.
yeah. He because he gave up a lot of people. And that was like something you had to do. Basically, it was like you have to, you had the option of giving up names of people that you thought were communists and just like ruining their careers essentially. And he did that to a lot of like notable people in the industry, and he kind of got off unscathed. And there's this moment in the 90s, I want to say like the 97 or 98 Oscars, where he's given an honorary Oscar. And there's like several notable people, like everyone's clapping for him, but not everyone. There are like multiple people in the audience that are just sitting there, not doing anything because they're like, yeah, this guy screwed over a lot of people in the industry and he shouldn't be awarded.
Dang, good for them. Stand on business.
Yeah.
Boo. Boo. Like, years late boos.
So, you know, studio system by the early 60s is essentially just dying out. It's on its dying breaths. Contract stars largely disappeared. You know, they've moved away, doing their own little things. They've got the power now, so they're going to use it and not be um at the studio's every whim like the way they used to. Also, another thing, I don't know if I mentioned this before. You know, they lived on houses like near the studio. Like they had like each of them had their own houses if they were contract players like that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Crazy.
yeah. Um, and then, you know, younger audiences, which is where the money is, and you know, we've got to have money. Just kind of rejected the polished style of classic Hollywood. And the late 60s, early 70s would begin a movement known as New Hollywood, where the directors had the unpreceded creative control. And that led to films like Bonnie and Clyde, great film, The Graduate, great film, Easy Rider, also a great film. Haven't seen that last one yet, but I will eventually. And yeah, I mean that's pretty much it on the golden age of Hollywood. It was great when it was great for certain people. It was terrible when it was terrible for others. Um, and essentially just, you know, studios could only hold a stranglehold on stuff like that for so long before people are going to want more out of it, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. That was kind of the problem with it too, is it was so much happening in such quick succession of technological advances and all these other things that it did, like, once people saw that this door was open, they needed, like, they needed to get in the windows, they needed to go in the chimney, they just need to go, like, just all up in the house. Like, no, like, we're just focusing on the door. And the audiences were like, bro, that train's coming at me. I need to see more of that. I'm just kidding. We were just talking about that. We don't think people were really like, they couldn't have been that scared and thought like the first ever film was actually coming at them. There's just no way. But I keep joking about it because I think it's really funny to just picture like, oh my God, it's a screen. Oh, there's a light. Oh my God. Um,
You know what? This was around the time that Coke was still in Coca-Cola. So, you know what?
oh, you
If
know what?
around the time they thought asbestos was going to be like good for buildings.
I forget if that not everything was golden back then.
Yeah.
Some people think that everything was so pretty and perfect. And are you sure about that? You wanna whip out your camera picture phone really quick? And
It was if you ignore everything else happening.
yeah, and honestly, that's the issue with Hollywood too, is they keep wanting to go back to this time and this age where it's like, "We need more films like this," and it's like, no, because at the end of the day, they were just experimenting. They were just coming up with regulation and different production codes. It was just starting to, like, wiggle in the realm of like, I guess we'll be fair to you guys." And it was starting to become in the process of becoming more capitalistic, it was also becoming more creative, which it was like kinda they started striking that balance. And it's definitely a cool balance to have. We're losing it now, but wanting to just completely strip it back and start anew, I'm like, "No. Guys, we did that before. The train is gonna come at you." No.
Beware of trains, guys. Unless they're on a background projected by a light, I think you'll be okay then.
Yeah, but even so, still be cautious because
You never
that's
know.
crazy. And also, they can mimic trains with sound. It's scary.
Sounds like a demon if you ask me.
Oh my god, get the preacher that did the 67 Exorcist back on here. Or the
All right.
priest, not preacher.
All right. I hope you guys like that episode. This is the first in a series that I'm going to call the good old days for this month. We're just going to be covering basically most of the 20th century of America, and cover, just notable moments and periods. So next episode, we'll see. We'll see what it'll be. I don't want to spoil. Mainly, I don't have the full idea fleshed out yet, so we will see. All right. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.